I think that the kids would more appreciate that. That they see somebody concerned about what they're doing and how to do it. We walk away to turn our head, act like we don't see. That's wrong.
This is Sam.
This is Paul. And this is Southpaw. Today on the podcast, we have Gordon Marino. Gordon is a professor of philosophy at St. Olaf College. He is the author of several books, most recently the Existentialist Survival Guide, How to Live Authentically in an Inauthentic Age. Gordon is also a longtime boxing coach, as well as an award-winning boxing writer. He's written for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, The Atlantic, Newsweek, the Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and many others.
Hi, Gordon.
Hey, how's it going?
So this is our second shot trying to do this interview.
Yeah, that's right. Last time I told you guys that it was one of the best interviews you ever had, and you called me back and said, so you better come through again, man. Come on.
We're just meatheads, you know?
Oh, man.
You can't, this is still amateur hour. We're figuring this stuff out.
Oh, that's good. Okay, get it. 2 strikes and you're out. Let's go.
Okay. So tell us about your new book.
Okay. Yeah. So after 35 years of working with Kierkegaard and existentialists, I decided to try and see, what wisdom I could distill from these thinkers. And so it was an attempt to really just get at some practical wisdom about life from Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, and others. That it's intermingled with stories. So I think that it's really important that if you're going to have, if you have a kind of a theory or a point of view you want to express, it's really useful to have some examples. And so I try to provide a lot of real life examples, most of which are embarrassing.
So what started your interest in philosophy?
I grew up in a house that was a lot of fights and a lot of trouble. And it certainly made me think a lot about, who's right, who's wrong, the truth, and things like that. So it was a difficult upbringing in that sense, complicated. Both my brother and sister became therapists.
Was there like a teacher at school who kind of introduced you to philosophy books in the first place, though, during this time? Or
when I went to Bowling Green State University to play football, and I encountered a philosophy professor there who was just tremendous. His name was Alfred Serge Kapler. He was only maybe 26 and I was like 19, and he just finished his PhD. And he pulled me out of class one day and said, you have some ability at this, and I see you have a passion, and you need to go to a place where you can get Division I training intellectually. So I transferred to Columbia. So it was a great teacher because he really went out of his way, went over to check on my records and things like that. And it was a real model for a teacher, like, going the extra mile with somebody. And so I've certainly tried to carry his tradition on.
Yeah, that's the thing that I really liked about your book. It was both memoir and kind of a introduction and a guide on existential philosophy, but you used yourself as kind of a way to piggyback these ideas that might seem very abstract. So you connected it to yourself. So I think especially people who are into combat sports, but also like maybe in particular young men who dealt with a lot of, anger issues or troubled past, I think it made it really accessible.
Insecurities too, right?
Yeah.
Anger and insecurities go together a lot. Yeah. So that's quite a bit of boxing in there.
You basically wrote a philosophy book like for regular people, because we kind of see philosophy, as something just for those academics in ivory towers.
Yeah.
How is philosophy, in particular existentialism, like useful for regular people? How could they apply some of these ideas, or why would it even be worth applying?
Well, first off, philosophy is this love of wisdom. It's not a love of knowledge. So about how to live, and so it should apply to everybody. So it shouldn't be an elitist academic type of thing. It's really anybody who's educated and thoughtful and honest with themselves. It can be very, very useful. So I try to bring it down to the ivory tower a little bit. And I think there's more of that lately. To some extent, since our world's become more secularized, there's more and more people people don't want to give up that something deeper in life, and so they turn to philosophers, which I have issues with too. So some of the insights from existentialism are one that I talk about are the importance of being able to sit with negative emotions like anxiety and depression. Not to medicalize anxiety. Anxiety, for example, is this. It's an anxiety that, according to Kierkegaard, you understand that you're free. It's a sign that you're a spirit, And so they address some of it seems to me that in order to be a good person, you need to be able to deal with inner obstacles. It's easy to be really nice, and it should be easy to be nice when things are going really well. But when you're having a rough time, can you be kind? Can you reach out? And I found the existentialists address that issue, and that's very helpful.
So is that what you mean by inauthentic age and living in such an age? And what does it mean to be authentic?
Well, I give two models there, and I have to confess that it was the publisher, Harper, that wanted me to talk about authenticity. I wasn't really going to talk about it very much, but there's two models there. There's one notion that you were born with a certain, that you're born to become a certain kind of self. Say from a Kierkegaardian point of view, who's a Christian, to be faithful to God, to trust in God, right? And no matter what else you do in life, that's your real self. And if you don't realize that, you haven't become yourself. On the other hand, you have someone like Nietzsche and many people today who believe that to become a self is a creative act. It's like an artistic production. You create yourself. So there's two different models of the self there. And I think modernity, we're certainly leaning towards the one where we think of the self as a work of art. But I'm probably more on the Kierkegaardian side.
So if that's something that your publishers wanted you to add to the title.
Yeah, don't tell them I said that, though.
We'll edit that out. I'm sure they don't listen to this podcast anyway.
That's good to know.
If that was something that was later kind of a way to mold your story, what was the original idea for your book?
Well, they just wanted a chapter on authenticity,
okay.
And that was fine with me because it's a important motif with existentialists, and so I had no gripes about it. But it wasn't something I came up with originally, And so we do live in this age where there's constant self-presentation, social media, things like that, and I think little concern about who we really are. And that's why I really push, I've mentioned this before to you, I think I mentioned in the book that I really push my students to think about not just what they want to do or how they want to seem in life, but what kind of people they want to be. When they're 20 years old, think about, what kind of human being do I want to be? What's my aim as a human being? Because you really can't control a lot of issues around vocation and, talents to some extent, a lottery, all kinds of things, but we should have some control over what kind of person we want to be. So, and I don't think we give enough thought to that. So I would connect that with authenticity. What kind of human being do you want to be?
I think our first go around also, you connected authenticity to morality, like where you were explaining how if you see something and you felt like you should have acted, but you didn't, that could be a form of inauthenticity. Could you speak to that more?
I don't know that that's a form of inauthenticity, but it's certainly a sense of failure. And I do talk to my students a lot. My feeling is that moral issues just jump out of the closet sometime. You can be walking down the street, seeing somebody get mugged. You're going to jump in. Or somebody can ask you, higher up can ask you a question, and if you tell the truth, your job might be in jeopardy. So when I teach ethics, I try to prepare students for the fact that you usually don't get a warning sign when ethical crossroads are coming in, and what it feels like when you fail at those, when you don't do the right thing. And the point I try to make in the book a lot is it comes from Kierkegaard that one of the greatest impediments to leading a righteous life, to being a good person, kind person, is self-deception. We talk ourselves out of the hard truths, and I spend a lot of time on that in there. So I think that's one of his great insights, that, there's our tendency to talk ourselves out of the right thing to do when it's going to involve a sacrifice.
Because moral dilemmas can kind of come out of nowhere, is that kind of the power of especially Kierkegaardian existential philosophy, where you kind of examine your own deceptions and kind of think these out first, so you're not so taken by surprise? You already kind of know how you should act in these situations.
I think it's a good idea, don't you, to know how you'd like to act, how you want to act.
Mm-hmm.
That's the question. How do you want to act? How important is it to you to have a clear conscience and everything. So it's good to have an idea of what you think sometimes we think of hypothetical moral examples. You say, well, I don't know that I could do that. Well, that's not the question. The question is, what would you like to be able to do? And many people, I think people coming back from wars who've been through the crucible suffer from feeling like they've done the wrong thing, and how paralyzing guilt can be in a society where there's no longer any forgiveness, except this idea of self-forgiveness, which I take to be pretty phony.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think I can't forgive myself for doing some harm to you. You need to forgive me, right? I cannot torture myself about it. I can repent and say, man, I'm going to try to be better in the future, but I can't forgive myself. Third-party forgiveness seems to me to be just the therapeutic idea. It's not possible, but it doesn't mean we do something wrong or we don't do the right thing out of fear or whatever. We should shake our head, be sorrowful, and commit ourselves to doing better in the future. But I don't think we can forgive ourselves for it. That's a misnomer.
It seems like the same line of logic where some people, like our president, will tell you that he's smart. And regular people say that too. And I'm like, wait, isn't that for me to decide if you're smart or not? Isn't that supposed to be like the third person observation, not you telling yourself that?
That's right. Yeah, but don't get me going on that topic, please. Just follow my Twitter feed. I'm always tweeting back at our friend there. Flat top, Dennis the Menace, whatever.
Both you and Sam talked about moral dilemmas, but oftentimes what I'm discovering is that especially the youth and sometimes adults don't seem to have fully fleshed out morals to begin with. So if that's the case, how is it that they should go about trying to determine what their morals are, how to achieve it, and if it's too late to even develop them?
Well, I don't know. It's not like you have to have a full-fledged moral theory in your head. One of the hypotheticals I posed in my class the other day was, suppose you're a med school student and you've been accepted to med school with a scholarship and everything, but it's final exam time. You're 21. You get drunk. You sleep through the exam, and you need to pass the course in order to go into med school. And the professor's got kind of a soft touch. Do you lie to the professor and tell him you slept through it, or do you tell him this is what happened and take the consequences? So a lot of students feel, well, in that case, you should probably lie. It's no big deal. And I try to make the case that when you tell a lie, you become a liar. It becomes easier the next time.
Okay.
Because is your code going to be, I'll tell the truth unless I believe there's serious consequences. So I don't think it's so much a moral. We have a list of moral codes, like commandments. Well, maybe some, but just a kind of vision of what kind of person I want to be.
I noticed that more in the other world that you occupy, in the world of boxing, and especially actually sports too in general. I see this a lot with I wrestled in high school.
Yeah.
And the coach oftentimes would just sit us at the end of our practice where we wouldn't even talk about wrestling. He would talk about your character. He did that a lot, and I know they do that in football and other sports and boxing as well.
Not so much in football anymore.
No,
I coach football. Seriously, no. It used to be we talk about courage and all these things, and coaches do preach a lot, but it's more like on technique now and moving people around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it is still coaching, but it's like a trainer.
Yeah, but it was really sports are born in the schools to build moral character, to build virtues like courage and things like that, and that's how it was connected up with public education. But yeah, it's good. I think it's a great place to talk to them. There's also a lot of trust between. There's a strong bond between coaches and players all the time. So yeah, I think it's a good venue for that. But in boxing, we always say it doesn't. There's always this kind of builds character, and I've argued that a lot. But it also, most people say it reveals character. I think it does a little bit of both. It can mold your character. And I like to argue that. In order to do the right thing, we need to be able to take a hit. In order to be able to take a hit, we need to have the courage. And boxing gives us some practice at that, at working with fear. And we don't get a lot of practice with fear, how to handle it. That's what was brought up. It was legalized after World War I believe, and pushed by the military because they wanted people, after World War I, they wanted people who'd experienced something like a warlike experience. And so that's where they brought boxing into the academies and teaching boxing and legalized boxing. But yeah, so connection between sports and character. Yep.
At school, because you teach both boxing and you teach, as a professor, you teach classes. Do people call you coach or do they call you professor, or it depends on what you're teaching?
I also coached football at St. Olaf for many years. And so they do call me coach, but I have to say it's a little rough because I get a number of football players in my class, and some of the other people feel like, I have a different relationship with them than other people. So it's a little tricky, but it's good. No, it's really good because you get to, it used to be coaches in colleges came out the faculty, and you get to know people in a way that's quite extraordinary. For example, a lot of the football players I have, I wouldn't get a sense of the landscape of their minds if I hadn't been with them on both the playing field and in class. And it's really a beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful thing to really connect with them in different aspects of life. And I think it's really good for professors to do, whether it be football, habitat, or whatever, just to connect in different levels, places.
I'll bet there's only a handful of people who are actually professor coaches.
Today, that's right. No, it's become so specialized today.
Oh, was it more common in the past?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like in the 40s and 50s, there would be more common. And coaches would coach 2 and 3 sports.
Oh.
Yeah. But now it's, if you're a football coach at Division 3, you coach that all year and recruit and all that stuff. So it's athletics, but much more specialized.
Are you still coaching the football team, or have you stepped back from that role?
I've been thinking about it the next couple of days, man. Yeah. My hands are pretty banged up from boxing and all that stuff, so I got some pretty serious injuries.
Last time we talked to you, your knee was all messed up too.
Me too, from football, throwing the football. I'm a maniac out there. I really am a maniac. I'm pretty serious about technique in both boxing and football, so I'm pretty crazy. Yeah, I always feel like in those sports, it's people want to learn new things, and if you're not, so I find technique really important. Otherwise, it's just, you just keep making the same muscle memory. You don't get better, so I think it's really important to teach new stuff in sports.
What do you think is tougher on the body, football or boxing?
Well, boxing, man, it's not even a comparison.
Well,
not
really?
the overall, not the overall body. Yeah, you're right. In terms of orthopedic stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly football, but man, when I went from playing football to boxing, football seemed like badminton to me. It just did, man. Well, I was in New York, at gyms in New York, and some very good fighters there. So it was like, holy crap,
And especially with boxing, there's just a lot of sparring, right?
Yeah.
Now it doesn't seem like you do as much amateur, but in the past you had to do a lot of sparring rounds and a lot of amateurs before you went pro.
Oh yeah, no. Well, there's always been people that didn't have extensive amateur backgrounds that go pro. That's always been the case. But in order to be a successful boxer, you got to spar all the time. Like when I'm training a pro fighter, I make sure we get at least 60 rounds of good sparring in before a fight. So, and that's a lot of shaking of the brain, man. That's a lot of it can take its toll. I'm really someone like I've been concerned there hasn't been enough talk about Adonis Stevenson. I mean, he went to a coma. Boxing world is kind of like doesn't say anything about him right now. And you know about him, light heavyweight champion who went to the coma, and he's 41. I don't think people should be fighting into their 40s like that.
Did he recently wake up?
They don't. There's hardly anybody says anything about him. He woke up. So did Mago. What's his name from a few years back? But he's paralyzed his whole life.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Won a huge lawsuit against the New York State Athletic Commission, but just terrible. And so it's dangerous. And I think the older people. I don't think people should be fighting into their 40s. The idea that I always get on boxing and said existentialism.
Your publishers aren't listening anyway. It's okay.
No, man, but from what I understand, the brain shrinks as you get older, and there's more. So there's more likelihood that it'll slap against the skull when you get hit. So like up in the 50s and things like that, your brain shrinks some, and there's more space in there for it to hit against the skull. But that's what Kierkegaard said.
Actually, that leads me to a question that one of our listeners wanted us to ask you. His question was, he feels sometimes conflicted where he's watching boxing and he watches every combat sport. So, but when he watches them, he always wants to see a knockout. But at the same time, like the story you just gave, he also feels very conflicted and guilty. Like, wait, I want to see a knockout, but I don't want to see anybody get hurt.
Right.
Is there like a philosophical way to think about this? Like, because I feel conflicted too sometimes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a really good point. Good question. And that's true with people going into combat sports. They're on the one hand worried about whether or not they can fight, and they're also worried about whether or not they have it in them to hurt somebody, to hit somebody. So yeah, it's part of human nature, and I think both, and more so with some people than others, to enjoy violence, the beauty of violence, and that's certainly an avenue for anger, but also to feel ambivalent about it. So I think that's pretty typical. Or at least he feels ambivalent. There's a lot of people who don't feel ambivalent. They just want to see blood. It's pretty, but that does speak to the fact that we're angry. There's a lot of anger. Just watch the movies, man. I mean, look at the stuff going on in the movies, TV series, and throat slittings. I mean, like you can't get through a series. You can't get through a True Detective. All these bizarre, killings and stuff. If we didn't dig it at some level, I don't think people be watching them so much. So there's something there's an attraction to it. People have a hard time admitting it. So the serial killer, you'd have things like, remember Dexter, like the serial killer who killed serial killers. You gotta have the excuse for it. It's got to be the sensitive tough guy who doesn't want to hurt people, but he has to in order to save someone. So it's always something to legitimize it. But there must be something there.
Didn't you tell us a story last time about Manny Pacquiao where you asked him kind of a similar question about his destructive power with his fists and how he feels about it? Like, could you go into that again?
Yeah, that was really sweet. Yeah, so I asked Manny, that being a devout Christian, who at the time was quite a knockout artist, how he felt about hurting people, and it was over the phone, and he said he didn't say anything for a second or two, and I'm like, oh man, I screwed this interview up, and I said, I'm sorry if I offended you. He goes, no, it's a really good question. He says, I think what we're doing is wrong. He was talking about Tim Bradley at the time. I think what we're doing is wrong, but that God will forgive us because we have a calling. So it's kind of contradictory idea, but that God will forgive us because we have a calling, which usually comes from God. But I also talked to other who's the guy? Another guy who fought him, and said he was still as fast, but that he doesn't have the killer. He's always backing off. He doesn't want to hurt people. Always get that sense, and that's been an issue for him of late. Like Margarito, he broke his eye socket and didn't want to. Was really, So he's got a lot of tenderness in his heart too.
Oh yeah, but Margarito's a cheater, so I don't know about that.
I know. I agree. That was what he did was horrible. But Manny's reluctance to really finish people off and stuff, Except with Marquez that time, he was real when he got. No, you guys are tricksters, man. You get me talking. Let's talk about Kierkegaard for like 2 seconds, and you get me off of the boxing thing.
No, it just seems like Kierkegaard always leads to boxing. I don't know how other people talk about Kierkegaard.
Not with me. I have plenty of discussions with people about Kierkegaard, and boxing never comes up.
Actually, going back to your book, some of the most like emotionally, riveting or like interesting parts in the book is like talking about your own despair that you face throughout your life. And that goes back to like, human suffering as form of entertainment. It's like, oh, he's suffering. That's kind of entertaining, reading it.
Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying about all the violent shows we watch. But one of the things that occurred to me reading those sections is, and you talked about this the last time we spoke, but was about the spirit. Like you could be depressed, but still have a strong spirit. Like there was a difference between the spiritual despair and like this clinical depression.
Yeah.
Can you kind of explain that again?
Yeah, well, just try it when you're feeling really down, like nothing matters and everything's hopeless. Can you reach through that and still be a loving person? And I still deal with that all the time, that challenge. Or do you become nihilistic? Like, when you feel hopeless and nothing looks like it's, and you're down, and can you still be a caring person? And that's the challenge. And to the extent that you can, you're not in despair for Kierkegaard, right? To the extent that you can still reach through your pain. And the person I like to bring up a lot is Abraham Lincoln. I mean, there was a guy that they had to hide all kinds of implements around the White House all his life. He was suicidal.
Wow.
A really depressive person, and and he was such a loving and strong person at the same time, So we could think of despair as like depression as a mood, a feeling that some of us have to deal with much more than others, and that can have all kinds of origins. But despair would be when you give into that depression and kind of define yourself in terms of it and no longer aspire to be, for Kierkegaard, faithful to God, a loving human being. And so the distinction between a spiritual and a psychological disorder was what I was trying to get at there.
That was actually a really powerful idea because it kind of, a lot of people who deal with depression or during my own like dark times, like reading this book now, I realized, oh, okay, you could be depressed, but still find meaning in your life or some kind of purpose, or you could be depressed, but still get things done. It doesn't mean that you're defeated.
Right. But it's more than getting things done. It's can you still care about other people? Can you reach out and be a loving person? Or can you, in Kierkegaard's case, you still trust in God? Do you still think life is good? I mean, so it's more than like a lot of people can work through the depression and still they'd be in despair. But can you still hold yourself to a high moral standard and to be a brother and to be a brother or sister to people? That's really hard. So that when depression gets really bad, I don't know. I feel nihilistic, like nothing matters anymore. It's just this place is just a hall of doom. That's all. And with occasional nice moments. And I always think of the cop show. What are you going to do when they come for you? With depression being the cops, So it's can you reach through it? And that's what we got to try to do.
I know you speak at lengths about Kierkegaard, and if you're ever in a social setting where you have to do, let's say, a quick elevator pitch of sorts, like 30 seconds, how would you explain Kierkegaard to the layman or to somebody who might not be familiar with his work?
Well, as I said, I oftentimes talk about what's attractive about him, namely his recognition of things like anxiety and depression, and how important it is to be able to deal with those inner obstacles to being a good human being. And his all the emphasis he says that there's so many situations in life where we have to make a choice and can't do it on the basis of calculating reason. So the limits of reason. So I talk about a couple of his insights usually. The elevator pitch. Come on. But it's true. I get it. I do get that question. I usually get what would Kierkegaard say? I don't know what the fuck he would say. Call him up.
Actually, that leads me to my next question. It's a good segue, which is, how did you get started in boxing?
Because yes, I've been working on taking a sabbatical from boxing right now, so I haven't been watching fights or anything because I lost my job with HBO when they closed down. The Wall Street Journal's not covering as much anymore, and some ambivalence about it. So I thought I was taking a sabbatical from it, but you're bringing me back. Not just that there was a lot of violence in my house, and the idea of vulnerability. Just feeling like you can protect yourself, feeling safe. It's a way to feel safe, avoid a feeling of vulnerability, even though it's and there's all kinds of people do it in all kinds of different ways, right? And yeah, there was a lot of anger too. A lot of anger.
So if you're taking a sabbatical or thinking about it, are you going to take some time off of coaching as well?
No, I got a high school group I'm dealing with coming up. No, I don't. I guess I'm taking a sabbatical from professional boxing. I guess it's very meaningful to a lot of kids. It really is really good for some kids, because not just because of not the boxing per se, but the close relationship with the coach. That's really much more so than in football, where you're there with them every day, and and they start opening up about their lives. So it's really powerful. It's a way of doing therapy without them knowing it sometimes.
Has your style of coaching and training changed over the years? And if so, what's changed and what stayed the same?
Yeah, it's gotten much better because I always, all the champions I talk to, I pump it for information about technique stuff. And Angelo Dundee was one of my mentors, and he was helpful. And Emmanuel Stewart, I was ghostwriting his book for a time. So I've studied a lot of, like I'd always ask, I'd ask a fighter, what's your best move, and that really helped me be a better coach. I think, really, I feel really confident in my knowledge of that stuff. So,
Even the term coach, right, has like a psychological kind of
Yeah.
connotation
Well,
to it, right?
yeah, especially now because you get this idea. I'm a life coach. That's it's a whole new field, right?
Yeah.
It's therapy's taken. Everything's a form of therapy.
But the athlete coach relationship, there is that kind of, because where I see that term coaching a lot now, because I just had a kid like literally like a couple weeks ago. So
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah,
congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah. What's his or her boy, girl?
It's a boy,
What's the name?
Gil.
Oh man, that's beautiful. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
You got so many good things ahead of you. And so many worries. No, that's beautiful.
Oh man, the worries. Oh
Yeah, it's a lot of.
yeah, I'm panicking at everything.
It's like having your heart outside yourself.
Oh yeah, that's actually the best definition of how I feel at all times, though.
Yeah, and I bet you feel a lot more energy too. You get some energy from it too.
Yeah, normally if I don't sleep, I'd be dead. But
Yeah.
actually now, even though I'm not sleeping much, but I'm still pretty good. So
Yeah, that's how. Oh, congratulations. Yeah,
but what I was going to say is even in the parenting books,
yeah,
they use the term coaching and they even explain why, because they're saying there is a psychological aspect. You kind of have to be kind of, have this psychological, it can't be just like telling them what to do or not to do.
right.
They're talking about, you also have to think about their development of their brain, how they think and those aspects. And that reminded me of like, oh yeah, that is like unconsciously what I think of in a sports coach as well. Like, that they're going to develop my mind as well, or they know the right triggers or the things to say to me specifically to get me to do the right things or the right techniques.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And also, you maybe you've seen this already, but personality comes out pretty quickly too. So really getting a real clear idea of trying to develop an idea of what kind of personality you're dealing with, because that comes out early. I had two boys and their personalities were quite different, even though they're grew up only 18 months apart. And so taking notice of that. It's really, really important, but
How much of that is a factor in whether you're coaching football or boxing, where they have maybe certain physical attributes, but their personality like wants to do other stuff? Do fighters tend to want to do more things based on their personality rather than their physical attributes?
the thing with boxing is people drop in and out of it. That's why I get sick of it, because I want to be a boxer. I want to be a boxer. Like you're training them there for a couple of months or so, and then the next thing you know, I want to do something. They get punched in the nose or they lose their first fight and it's goodbye, and they come back again. So all this kind of approach avoidance stuff with boxing is because they want the red badge of courage, and they get through boxing. But so boxing is more frustrating like that. On the other hand, in football, it's much more corporate type sport. So I got to be careful what I say, given if there's a head coach there, and I can't contradict what he's saying. So it's much more corporate mentality. One of the things I did, I was because I was coach at Virginia Military Institute, and I had a mentor named Gordy Calkins who was in the Marines, and he was one of the great lessons I got from him was really being hard. I'm expecting a lot from people, pushing them, in a loving way, So so when people have your trust, you can. But that the loving thing to do in a lot of cases, you got to tell people hard truths. You got to be straight with them, no bullshit. And I've worked at that, and that was hard for me. To call people to task sometimes, the boxers to task. You haven't been in here, you're not ready. That kind of stuff. Or you don't want to do this.
I'm sure they're not ready to hear it sometimes either.
No. Like I had a guy last year who a pretty wealthy kid who his big dream was to have a kid from San Francisco, and he was. I said, well, I always tell kids, if you son of a bitch, you got me back on the boxing again. You did it again. You guys are triggered. Oh, man. Anyhow.
Jedi mind trick.
That's, gosh.
It's like that movie Inception.
You're right. Oh man. Anyhow, so I always tell these kids, if you train consistently for a couple of months, and you go up to the cities where you see about, and you go to spar up in the cities, I'll get you about, and this kid did everything he was, supposed to do, but it was kind of like an adventure for him. So we go up to Duluth, and, it's a long ride for 3 1-minute rounds. And, it was a fight he should have won pretty handily, and he lost. And he comes out and he goes, "Oh man, that was fun." I said, "Oh man, I almost freaking killed the kid. I wanted to kill him." Because boxing, that's not the kind of I just, and it was a cultural experience. I never had a boxer with that kind of, ooh, that was fun. Whee! So it was just part of his resume. And I guess that's cool, but I went nuts.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask because it seems like fitness and boxing has kind of really gotten married. So a lot of people might be interested in it for like exercise or for fun or like a life experience.
Yeah.
Have you seen that change over
I
time?
can't stand it. Yeah, I tell people I don't do fitness boxing because a lot of the fitness boxing breaks down your technique. If you hit a bag for like 6 minutes, you're going to drop your hands. You're not going to get the proper technique. So I really draw a distinction between the fitness, which is okay. If you're doing fitness boxing, that's cool. But I don't think it's generally good for people who want to compete. And you really only get, something emotional out of boxing if you at least get the level where you're sparring. If you spar, having a bout's really good. Having a bout's great, sense of self-affirmation, which a lot of people are looking for. But you don't get that unless you spar. A lot of places like I know, Title Boxing around here, they don't allow sparring in there. They have a huge boxing gym, but there's no sparring in it.
Wow.
So, which is again okay, but I don't do it. I don't like it. I think it breaks down technique and doesn't do a lot of emotional good. So, any more questions about philosophy?
Yeah. What drives you crazy about philosophy? As a philosopher and a teacher, is there anything about the culture or other professors? Like, is there anything because I know boxing drives you crazy.
Yeah.
Does philosophy never drive you crazy?
Oh, yeah, no, definitely does. It gets, when it's too academic, too remote from, like, people treat it like it's a bunch of intellectual puzzles. And philosophers are really, you have to sacrifice a lot to become an academic philosopher. A lot of these people are super smart, and there's so few jobs out there, and getting a PhD can take 6 to 10, 6, 8 years. And where I went to University of Chicago, 10 years usually. And so they're really very much engaged in these kind of intellectual puzzles. And it's kind of insular in the sense of, only a few people can follow what's going on. So, and I think I have a much more practical approach to it. I came to philosophy in need of help, and so, but there's as much more. Sometimes the abstractions, the jargon, I don't appreciate. So that's something that gets the way with me.
And what do you think about we talked about, fitness and boxing getting married.
You're going to do it again. You're going to
No. I'm going to go back to philosophy. So what about this marriage I'm seeing these days, or actually I think it started, a while back, but much more mainstream now, marriage of self-help and philosophy. I joined these philosophy message boards, and then half the stuff they're sharing is just from self-help people.
Is that right?
Or academics. Yeah. Or academics like writing these rule books about self-help. And it's like,
yeah, that's what I was saying. I think, that philosophies that people who've given up on God, who put God to bed, have still want some idea, something deeper, and so they're turning to philosophers like priests now. And I think in order to be a sage or whatever, you need to demonstrate it in your life, So, but there is this need for something deeper. They don't just want to say, "Oh, there's no God." It's all, they want to have a spirit, but without a God, or That's why people go to yoga, mindfulness, anything. They want religion without any sense of authority. Yeah, but philosophers are definitely starting to fill in a niche here, especially Stoic philosophy, Stoicism. So that is an accessible philosophy. Those are the most popular self-help type philosophy books. But you're right. You're absolutely right. I think that's going on a lot. And my book is, it's listed on the self-help shelf apparently. So
yeah, it sells better there.
That's probably what I'm sure that's what they're thinking.
I think it's also the title itself when he says guide to.
Yeah,
it seems more appropriate to self-help.
Yeah, I fought with that title, man. I wanted something like there are no happy endings. They nixed that one right away.
Yeah, it seems like with nonfiction books now, the titles are like have to be the thesis or like this long description or a search term. Like if you're Googling something, the title is what'll come up.
Yeah, right. Or they that book that was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, stuff like that.
Yeah.
They love that shit,
Yeah.
That's what I should have. Yeah. I didn't realize the marketing aspect that goes with writing a book for a trade publication. So I had a lot of trouble with that. Luckily, my son's an editor, and he helped me, gave me some coaching on that.
Speaking of sons and youth, I have a younger sister and a younger brother in their 20s and 17s respectively, or teens respectively. And it's hard to introduce them to philosophy because they're from an age where they're used to getting things on the go as
Yeah.
well as not thinking deeply.
Memes. Memes.
Yeah, that's right.
What would be a good way to introduce them to philosophy subtly and early?
Yeah, I think Plato, Plato's dialogues, the Euthyphro, the Apology, but especially the Crito. So the Crito is only a few pages, and it's really deep because Socrates has been condemned to death, and Crito comes and tries to talk him into escaping because the Athenians really would like him to take off. And it's a beautiful dialogue. It's only a few pages, But this thinking of philosophy is this art of thinking slowly, and that's how I try to approach it. And it's a different way of thinking. So I mentioned to him, hey, okay, there's a spiritual dimension here where you learn to think slowly about something. But you're right. They just tell me what it's about. It's hard to. I start yelling in class and stuff, man. Like I do.
You start. I can't see it.
I go off right into class, man. I go like, you guys are like, hear this thing like Michelangelo, and you're like, oh yes, okay, brother. I know. And when they don't do the reading, when I'll ask them like a really straightforward question, and they haven't done the reading, I tell them, okay, now you have to say, I don't know this now, but I'll study it before the quiz. Like that.
Has college academic writing gotten worse over the years? Have you noticed that at all, or is it still pretty?
Oh yeah. No, it's assignments are shorter and shorter. Much more practical bent. Because of the cost of colleges, I think. So yeah, I would definitely say attention spans have diminished.
Are they using emojis in their essays now?
No, that's next. Pretty next will be just, when I was, for example, when I was at Columbia, in my first as a first year student, you were asked to write 25-page papers. If you do that today, they'd kick you out.
Oh yeah, they sue you.
That's right, they'd sue you. Yeah. No, it's a different culture. But I love them. I love students. I love them. I really care about them a lot, and I really feel privileged to be able to intersect with their lives. So it's really cool. It's a cool thing.
Actually, your book has been one of the easiest ones for me to recommend because, maybe they'll just read like a couple pages for free or whatever, and it's like, okay, this one seems accessible to me, and then they'll,
And if you put the word out there, please tell people they can feel. I have a lot of people that email me with questions, some rather long, so I'm really open to answering emails.
Oh wow! Okay.
It might take a few days. Sometimes it takes a few days, but I will answer, and happy to be in conversation with people about it.
Actually, before we wrap this up, let me ask one final question.
All right. What's it about?
Who's your favorite boxer of all time?
Joe Frazier, man.
Joe Frazier,
the smoke.
Smoking Joe Frazier.
Why is that?
He had such Well, his relentlessness. I can't believe you did it again.
It's the last one. I swear.
But the last question should have been like, okay, aside from Kierkegaard, never mind. Okay.
Who'd win in a fight?
I know Joe could dig deep. And so when you watched, March 8th was the anniversary of the first Ali Frazier fight. And it was weird because, again, Angela was my mentor. And but I just looked up to Joe and I tried to box his style. And it was, not everybody can do that. He was just so determined and such a beautiful left hook, a small guy, and certain dignity about him. I mean, it was real clear, real honesty and stuff. And there's a book coming out by Mark Cramer Jr. Called "Smoking Joe Frazier." It's coming out, and it's coming out from Harper, I think. And it's a new bio. So pretty amazing life. Really overcame a lot of stuff and loved him. Loved him. It was such an inspiration.
So to tie it back to philosophy, what would you think?
Here we go.
So
you guys know this. What I call okay. Let's see it. Okay, tie it back.
Okay,
let's see you do it.
So since you said your favorite boxer of all time, pound for pound, is Joe Frazier, what would you think his philosophy on life is?
To be honest, to give everything, to give completely, man. But that's the thing. And I think I told you this story last time, but when your technology cracked up or whatever. But one time I gave a talk at a law school, and I decided I would talk about commitment. And so I showed a couple of rounds from the Thriller in Manila as examples of, Frazier before the fight said he's ready to die.
Wow.
He was ready to die. I mean, he was so angry at Ali. He was a lot of rage in that fight. And so I'm playing this, and it's bringing tears to my eyes, which is kind of, I don't know, crazy. And I turn around, and the whole audience thinks I'm out of my fucking mind. I mean, and I knew it was downhill from there, man, because it was, I'm playing this incredible. Yeah, if you haven't watched it, you just got to watch it sometimes. I mean, Ali said it was the closest to death he ever came, and Joe was kind of blind in one eye to begin with, and when the fight was stopped in the 14th round after the 14th round by Eddie Futch, and just an amazing level of complete commitment. So what it is to, so that was certainly part of his philosophy, I think.
Yeah. Actually, no lie. This isn't a joke, but my love for philosophy and fighting is one overlap is that both seems very revealing. Like it reveals so much about the soul and the spirit. And that's what I love.
But you should also see it as something that develops the soul and the spirit. It doesn't just, like people when they first start boxing, they're afraid. That doesn't mean they're cowardly. That takes a while. You learn how to deal with certain feelings. Or again, in philosophy, you learn how to think. You like Plato said, this is something, one of the things I find why I do a lot of close readings in classes, because a lot of time, the real soul of these great authors is in between the lines, not like in the summaries you get. And somewhere Plato says that the greatest evil in life is laziness, just like not wanting to think things through, the laziness about thinking things through, as opposed to, lack of intelligence or, that people just don't want to, after 5 minutes ago, so that's enough. I don't need to think about justice anymore.
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, you're right. It does reveal something. It can tell you where you are, and it can help you get to another place if you're honest. So being honest with yourself that's one of the things I found most important in Kierkegaard and Joe Frazier. So
Plato, Crito.
Crito, yeah, Crito. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but introduce him. If you're going to read that, I would give him the introduction, say, okay, Socrates has been through this trial, and
okay, I'll add that suggestion in the show notes for people to find out.
Okay,
give us your plug. What's your Twitter? What's your plug?
Twitter,
what's everything?
Twitter's just at Gordon Marino, at Gordon, capital G, capital M, and my email address is Marino at Stolaf, STOLAF.edu. And if they like the book, please put a review on Amazon. If you don't like it too, I guess you should do that too. But here's my plug, man. That was
Good. I'll put all the links in the show notes.
Yeah, and next time you'll be calling me tomorrow to tell me that the technology didn't work. We got to do this again, right?
No, then you'll never hear from us again. We'll be so embarrassed. You'll never hear from us again.
Thanks for your interest, guys, and stay in touch, man. And congratulations on Gil, and God bless, and really appreciate it.
Yeah, maybe I'll email you about some parenting tips.
Anytime, man. I really appreciate getting connected with you. Yeah, thanks, guys. Take care.
All right, thank you.
Take care.